Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we have to talk about what we saw today in the NFL draft. We got some really good football players who went off in the board in this draft, and I mean, this just goes to show what we kind of already knew. As much mock drafts as we can make, as much things as we can talk about, we will never have it for certain. We'll never have it 100% sure. And just starting this thing off, I want to talk about some of my winners in this draft. Is the draft really just concluded, and we're starting to talk about kind of the post-draft reactions as we get out of day one. First thing I want to talk about is starting it off, Chicago Bears. This was kind of a scenario that a lot of people wanted. When you talk about the Chicago Bears being on the board at 1 and 9, you look at this and say, now we got Caleb Williams. Now we got Roma Dunze. And I dropped a mock draft scenario, 7-round mock draft a couple of days ago. And I said, okay, if we got Rome on the board at 9, we can use this as a possible trade back scenario. But what they did right there was they took Rome, they paired him with Caleb Williams. We just saw Rome, Caleb Williams. They were on the flight, having that connection, starting to build that bond early. Now you bring that to the football field. You're looking at one of the best receiving cores just off the bat. Because when we look at Keenan Allen, who can play in the slot, can also play outside, played a lot of his reps in the slot for the LA Chargers. But now you look at that and say, we mix that along with DJ Moore. Then you have Roma Dunze, who can also serve as a big slot, can play outside for you as well, and Caleb Williams, along with the run game that you have. DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, now Khalil Herbert still being there in the backfield. So I think that's just something strong to start off this draft. But we have a lot of other people, and really the NFC North, making some big time moves. We're going to talk about the Detroit Lions. We're going to talk about the Packers moves that I like, that I thought they made in this draft. But I want to get over to the other two quarterbacks. We saw these quarterbacks fly off the board. Going at number 2, we saw Jaden Daniels. And I think as we got closer to the draft, you kind of had that feel that Jaden Daniels would be the guy at number 2. Now, me personally, we're going to have this conversation at number 3 about Drake May going at number 3. And you think Minnesota Vikings, teams who could have possibly traded up, New York Giants, they sat there, they wanted to go with Malik Neighbors, and I can respect that. But when I look at a guy comparing Jaden Daniels and Drake, man, I think you look at Jaden Daniels, especially in that system with Cliff Kingsbury, he's coming out there day one. He's going to be your starter. Marcus Mariota, he's your backup. So you already have that plan set in place. And now Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Jahan Dotson, the pieces that they have there, you bring Austin Eckler in. I think they're going to add to the receiving core. I think they're going to add to the offensive line. But for me, I feel like in free agency, along with Dan Quinn now being the head coach there, the defensive mind that he is, I feel like they made so much moves in free agency, bringing along those pieces, bringing Bobby Wagner, bringing Jeremy Chin, continuing to bring guys like Frankie Louvu to now you're set up on the defensive side of the ball, and they got their franchise guy. Time will tell. Will Jaden Daniels over Drake May be a decision that you wanted to make? But that's going to lead me into number 3, talking about Drake May. And for me, I kind of really went back and forth talking about this decision. Drake made to the New England Patriots with the built-in structure that they have right now. I look at the offensive line. I look at the weapons for the New England Patriots. And you say right now, this isn't the most quarterback-friendly situation. But also looking at that, we have to think this was a top 5 to 10 defense last year. They were brutally injured on the defensive side of the ball. Christian Gonzalez, a lot of guys got hurt on that side of the ball. So now for Gerard Mayo, you have to say, with the team that we have in place, Jacoby Brissett, who I think is a high floor guy, when you look at a backup, a guy who can be a bridge quarterback for you, they're not going to be as bad to be in striking distance again for a quarterback. I look at if we could have traded back with the Vikings, if we could have taken Marvin Harrison Jr., I think those were viable options. But when you put all of that into place and say the quarterback, if it's not right, nothing else matters. You take Drake May right there, and I think I have to really buy into that. I don't think he's going to start day one for the New England Patriots. I think Jacoby Brissett is the guy there. He's been in the league. He's a veteran. He's proven some things. He's going to mentor him. When you look at Drake May, like I said, I think Jaden Daniels right now, today as we look at it, is a little bit more ready in terms of consistency, footwork, throwing down the football field, really in the systems. Now, when we talk about throwing with anticipation, having the arm talent, making all of the throws, Drake May is that type of guy. But if he can clean up his lower half, get more consistent, now you're looking at a guy, like I said, in day 2 and day 3, you have to continue to add to the offensive line. You have to continue to add with the weapons. But I think what we saw, 1, 2, 3 getting quarterbacks right there, that's kind of what some people felt. I really would have liked if they could have looked at some other options, but they wanted to get their franchise guy right there. Now, number 4, I mean, we knew all along Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be the guy for the Arizona Cardinals as long as he was on the board right there. So that didn't surprise me. But at number 5, though, and this is interesting because with JJ McCarthy, and this is a little bit further down the board, but we say if he's going to be the guy for the Minnesota Vikings, me personally, I was not trading up to 4 to 5. I was not trading up to get a guy like JJ McCarthy, although I think with Kevin O'Connell, with the Minnesota Vikings, the tackle duo they have, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, I think he's in a great system and scheme there, but I wasn't comfortable giving up the assets to get him. And then you're looking, they got Dallas Turner down the board. So I feel good about what they did right there. And for the Los Angeles Chargers is getting Joe Alt. Now, I saw some JC Latham steam. I saw some other things right there. Like I said, me personally, I saw Neighbors on the board. That was a guy that I would have taken if I was in the Chargers boat. But for them, they go Alt, and you think Trey Pipkins, Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, I believe, is going to be that right tackle for this football team. Trey Pipkins, he can play guard. He can do some different things for that football team. So you're just looking at a best 5 scenario, but Joe Alt is just one of those tackle prospects that you can't pass up on, and the Los Angeles Chargers did that right there. Now, we're looking at Malik Neighbors. I think this is one of the picks that we kind of expected. If he's on the board, we want to take him right there. And as we got closer to the draft, I never really felt like J.J. McCarthy was the New York Giants guy. You look at Brian Dable and what he has to get this team. Now, you bring in Jermaine Illuminor. You got Evan Neal. He's going to kick into guard. You look at Andrew Thomas on the left side, playing left tackle. I think when they reinforced the offensive line the way they did, still have John Michael Schmitz at center, now we have to put as much weapons as we can around Daniel Jones. And that's not to say that 5 to 10 years down the road, he's going to be the quarterback, but we have to get the value that's on the board. And I believe Malik Neighbors, along with Marvin Harrison Jr., those are 2 can't miss, as close as you can get to can't miss. When we look at receiver prospects, now he's not the same type of flavor. He's going to move around various alignments, but he's a playmaker. He's electric. He's going to get down the football field. He's going to find the end zone a lot for Daniel Jones in this football team. Now, I want to go to number 8 right here. Just talking about the Atlanta Falcons, because this was a pick that really threw me off. And Kirk Cousins, 4 years, $180 million. Bringing in Michael Penix Jr. Now, this has really nothing to even do with Michael Penix Jr. But I think when you talk about the thought process, bringing Raheem Morris, he's a defensive-minded head coach. You bring over Zach Robinson from the Los Angeles Rams. When I look at this football team, I thought they would go all in to try to win the NFC South this year. I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers. I'm looking at the New Orleans Saints. I think the Atlanta Falcons have themselves a really good chance of winning that division. But when you make a move and spend top 10 capital on a quarterback who's not going to start this year, he's not going to play. And further down the road, he could be the guy for this football team. But what is the thought process when you're Arthur Blank, when you're Raheem Morris, when you're Zach Robinson in that room for the Atlanta Falcons, and all of the steam you had coming into this offseason, some of the moves you made in free agency, really the draft capital that you have? I just don't see why a quarterback in this situation was the best possible scenario for them. And then you look at it, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, these are key weapons for this football team. And when you look at Kyle Pitts, his contract is going to be coming up. When you look at Drake London, his contract is going to be coming up. Bijan Robinson, his contract is going to come before Michael Penix Jr.'s. So I say all of this to say, by the time we have to pay all of these weapons that we try to surround Michael Penix Jr. with, Michael Penix Jr. will have to get paid himself. Or we're going to pick up the 5th year option. Or we're going to franchise. We're going to have to restructure a deal if he's that guy for this football team. And I just don't see a scenario right now when you have a veteran. Kirk Cousins, he's a good quarterback. You look at all of these quarterbacks in the NFC South. Baker Mayfield had a good season last year. Bryce Young, we have to see what he's going to do. They picked up Xavier Legette, 32 overall. But Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons had a still have a really, really good shot at winning the NFC South. And I just thought with everything that you did, with the mindset of this football team, I thought that you would really try to capitalize on it. Let me check up on some of the comments here. How far do you think Newton would drop? Man, I don't get it. I really don't get it. I want to go down the board and talk about that real quick. Johnny Newton, because okay, I understand the Cincinnati Bengals. They take Amarius Mims. I like Amarius Mims. I thought that you look at what they have there. Orlando Brown. They brought in Trent Brown. How much can you trust Trent Brown at right tackle? I understand getting Amarius Mims, but I'm looking down the board. Los Angeles Rams. I like Jared Verse. They could have gotten Newton. Pittsburgh Steelers. We're looking at teams that could have gotten Johnny Newton, and he's just there in the second round. One team is going to get a player like Johnny Newton, and we're going to say, how did he fall to the second round? Because I think for me, with Byron Murphy and Johnny Newton, it's not that far apart. I just like Byron Murphy a little more because of what he brings you in the run game. We talk about the technique. If you see the film, you see the dead leg, everything he brings, and he is undersized as a 3-tech, but he can also stop the run. That's why I like Byron Murphy a little more. We're gonna talk about him going to Seattle. Very, very interesting move. I want to get to some more comments. Arnold, hey man, when I talk about winners of the draft, let's talk about this for a second. For the Detroit Lions, understanding kind of what the needs are. You look at corner, that's somewhere they wanted to go. Edge, that's somewhere they want to go. But to get, and you could check out the video. I dropped it about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I said I compared Quinion Mitchell, Terry Arnold. I compared those two guys, and I said, who is my cornerback one in this NFL draft? And for me, just me personally, the flavor that I like, I went with Terry Arnold. And I understand they both can be elite corners in the NFL, but I just like the physicality. And you talk about Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, what type of football players do they like on this team? Terry Arnold is that type of guy. Then you look at it. He played with Brian Branch. Put those two back together. Look at what you have in the secondary right there. You also think about some of the pieces outside of that, and you still have some more draft capital to add. I think that was a home run fit, and I was surprised that because actually I want to look at the board on this. When there was a certain pick, the Indianapolis Colts, they went live to Latu. And I understand they want to add to the edge. He was my number one edge in this class. I thought that was a team that could have gotten Quinion Mitchell. I look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They could have gotten Quinion Mitchell. The Los Angeles Rams, they could have gotten Quinion Mitchell. But he goes 22 to the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that also needed corner. They got one of their corners, and they didn't have to move at all. You look at the Detroit Lions, yes, they moved up a couple of spots with the Dallas Cowboys, but they got one of my top players in this draft without having to do too much and give up that much capital. I like that for the Detroit Lions. I think when you look at the secondary, this was a long, long time coming. For me right now, and we can go check out the depth chart. Let's put this up right here. We could check out the depth chart for the Detroit Lions because I think right now, based on the film that I've watched on Terry Arnold, I'm looking at this roster right here. We can check this out. I think right now, when I look at Terry Arnold, Carlton Davis, who comes over for Tampa Bay, Amit Robinson, who comes over from the Vegas Raiders, Emmanuel Mosley has to come back healthy. Terry Arnold right now, based on this football team, now what version of Carlton Davis are we getting? That's going to be important as well. But Terry Arnold was a home run hit for me, and you didn't have to do too much to get him. I love that pick. The Detroit Lions were one of my winners in this draft just really because of that reason. Now, I want to get to some more of the comments and talk about some of the other things we have in this draft. The Falcons GM key card won't work tomorrow. Yeah, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it for the Atlanta Falcons. It's something that you kind of set the franchise back a little bit. I thought they would go all in. You have a very strong chance to win the NFC South, and you just don't capitalize on it. That's not a good process. And it's not to say Michael Penix Jr. a couple of years down the road won't be the guy. But what is the process and how do you get to that decision for this football team? We draft somebody that is not going to help us out all right now. I agree. And I want to talk about some more of my winners for this draft. There's a lot. There's a lot that I like. I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers getting Troy Fautanu. When we look at that right there, that was what I thought was going to happen. I thought the Seahawks were actually going to get Troy Fautanu because the New Orleans Saints, they took Talisa Fuanga, and I said, okay, Troy Fautanu is a guy who I think could also play guard. And when you look at that for the Seattle Seahawks, could he kick inside for them? Also, I thought that the perfect fit for Troy Fautanu would really be the Miami Dolphins. But when he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, they pick him up just one pick before the Miami Dolphins can get their hands on him. They go edge, they get Chop Robinson. But just imagine that. And we think about Teron Armstead, he is getting a little bit older, but like I said, he can Troy Fautanu, he could plug and play in guard and still kick back outside to the left tackle if he were to go to the Miami Dolphins. There were some teams that really got some steals in here. You look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they picked up Brian Thomas Jr., didn't have to do too much to get him. They even traded down and still got Brian Thomas Jr., who a lot of people thought had a lot of steam is going to the Indianapolis Colts, but he's right there. And you look at that with you look at that with Christian Kirk, what they have there over in Jacksonville. So I'm thinking Gabe Davis, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Trevor Lawrence. He gets him another receiver, somebody who can get down the football field, ultra athletic receiver. So I do like that right there. And now I want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings because I talked about them trading down, actually trading up one spot, moving with the New York Jets. I like what the New York Jets did as well, but you get JJ McCarthy and you get Dallas Turner. And like I said, you didn't have to go to 5. You didn't have to go to 4. You didn't even go to 3 to try to get Drake May. You stayed put, moved up one spot, got your guy in JJ McCarthy, who I think will be a good fit for this football team. Like I said, when I first got into the draft process, I just really didn't see it with JJ McCarthy. But the more and more that I watched a little bit more film, I'm seeing, okay, yeah, they run the ball. Yeah, there's games like Penn State where he's not throwing the ball as much. But when they really needed him in some of those situations, when it's 3rd and 12, when it's 3rd and 8, and we have to make a throw beyond the sticks, now you see the arm talent on display a little bit. Now you see kind of that playmaking extension a little bit. So I think with JJ McCarthy, he's going to be eased into this offense. Don't forget, they got Aaron Jones in the backfield. Like I said, I do like the offensive line. I like the receivers they have there, and I like Kevin O'Connell as a play caller. So I do like what the Minnesota Vikings did. And for Dallas Turner, you're coming into a situation where they picked up Jonathan Grenard, Daniil Hunter. He went over to the Houston Texans. They also picked up Andrew Van Ginkel. So now, if I'm thinking about everything we have with the Minnesota Vikings, I like the edge. We know what Brian Flores is going to do. He's going to blitz you. So I actually thought for them, Quinion Mitchell and JJ McCarthy would kind of be a home run fit because I know that he likes to play cover 1. He likes to play cover 0. He's sending the pressure. And I thought that Quinion Mitchell, he could play some off coverage. He could also pressure a little bit as we saw at the Senior Bowl, kind of building up that profile. But they went with Dallas Turner. And like I said, I do like it. I like him as an edge. I just thought Quinion Mitchell would be the guy for them. Now, getting down the board a little bit, one of the more underrated moves that we saw in the draft, Graham Barton. Just a guy I've been high on. I mocked him to the 49ers, and ever since then, he's been going higher and higher and higher. Now, Graham Barton has also been mocked to the Green Bay Packers a lot, but they went with Jordan Morgan. And I think it's interesting for me for the Green Bay Packers, kind of the route they took, because I really don't see Jordan Morgan coming in and starting right away as a tackle for this football team. I want to pull up their depth chart real quick because I do like their tackles. I believe they have Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker. We're going to go look at this right now. And he's actually slated to be a right guard for this football team. So when you look at the Green Bay Packers, now, like I said, Rasheed Walker at left tackle, Zach Tom at right tackle. I like both of those guys as a tackle duo. But at the right guard position, that's where we say we could have brought somebody in. And if you had Graham Barton, he brings you that flexibility. He played tackle for Duke, but he can also play guard, and he could also play center. I thought that would just be a home run fit, but I do like some things that I see with Jordan Morgan. Very athletic player, and probably the projection to guard will be a little better for a guy like Jordan Morgan. Now, I want to look at some of these other picks that we saw in this draft. Let's just talk about it. The Kansas City Chiefs getting Xavier Worthy. 4-2-1. Some people are going to look at that and say, does it translate? Are we getting John Ross? Are we getting Tyquan Thornton? Or are we getting Deshaun Jackson? Are we getting Tyreek Hill? What kind of football player are we getting? And I think you're getting Xavier Worthy. I wouldn't compare him to any of those guys, honestly. I'm seeing the Tank Dell comparison, but I just think with Xavier Worthy, kind of plugging him into that system that you have over there with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, you have your intermediate threats. You have Rashee Rice who can do a little bit of things. He's probably going to have a suspension to start the season, but you're going to have him. He's kind of that playmaker underneath. Then you bring in Hollywood Brown. He can stretch the football field. Xavier Worthy, of course, he can stretch the football field with the 4-2-1. Now, you still have Travis Kelce. You still have Isaiah Pacheco. And you got Patrick Mahomes, who's elevated to a point where it's not a defense that he can't see, and it's not a defense that he can't process and get through the reads on. So when I look at that, I'm just thinking about a gadget in Andy Reid's offense. Andy Reid was the worst person to see a guy like this with. And I always thought, okay, what if they get their hands on Ladd McConkey, who I really like as a receiver? He is still on the board. Adonai Mitchell is still on the board. But Xavier Worthy, really any guy that they get, Andy Reid is going to maximize his talent and find the best thing out of him. They needed this guy. Now you can't sit in that 2-high safety set. Now you're going to have to open up the box, let Isaiah Pacheco run a little bit. We're going to have to cover these guys down the football field. We can't sit on everything underneath and say we're just going to play football like this, keep everything in front of us, because now the Kansas City Chiefs have guys who can run behind you, and that's what they needed for the longest. When we saw this football team struggling, they were struggling with drops, focus drops, not being disciplined. We talk about Kadarius Toney, what he had, neutral zone infraction versus the Buffalo Bills. But now I think kind of as they got into the playoffs, we saw that team flip the switch a little bit. And then as they won the Super Bowl, we started to see everything click for that football team. So I think Xavier Worthy is a really, really good piece for this team. And I like to see them go tackle in the later round, something they can add. Now, Worthy to the Chiefs is still, yeah, I agree. Just a very, very good player. Now, interesting player that I really saw was Ricky Pearsall to the San Francisco 49ers. Slick Rick to the San Francisco 49ers. Very good receiver. Did not know that he would go in the first round and did not know that he would go to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, what does this tell us? I think that with Nate Wiggins off the board, with Jordan Morgan off the board, Tyler Guyton off the board, really some of the places that you probably thought they could go, Graham Barton, places that you thought they could go, now they pivot to receiver. And when we hear the trade rumblings, is it Brandon Ayuk or is it Deebo Samuel? I think when you bring in Ricky Pearsall, to me, I look at a guy who's obviously, he's coming in right away and he can be a plug-and-play slot guy. A separator, can do some things underneath it, can also get behind you if you sleep. Now, with that, I think having Brandon Ayuk as the X, I really like that in that offense. The question becomes, what do they value? What does Kyle Shanahan value? Do I want to say, I looked at Devonta Smith. I look at Amon St. Brown, the money that he just got, along with the guaranteed money that he just got. Brandon Ayuk is in this same receiver market. Justin Jefferson is in the same receiver market. T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb. How do we project that if we're the San Francisco 49ers? Do we say, okay, we want to pay Brandon Ayuk that because Kyle Shanahan feels that route runner and that separator is the most important thing in this offense? Or do we say Deebo Samuel, although you're a playmaker, although you can do a lot of things underneath, we're going to kind of pivot off of that a little bit, see what your value is, move off of you somewhere along this draft. Now, in day 2, there's still a possibility that a trade could happen. T. Higgins has requested a trade. Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade. There's guys who are on the market who may not have warranted day 1 picks, but you still got to look at that in day 2 and say, okay, maybe somebody is going to pick them up. Now, a lot of people have been talking about the Buffalo Bills, and just kind of looking at what the Buffalo Bills did. They traded out of the first round, and I don't think, based on kind of where they were, they understood. Kind of like I said, you have to project this and understand what is the board, who's going to go off the board. I believe that the Buffalo Bills guy is Adonai Mitchell, Khalil Shakur. We look at what they have over there in that offense, Curtis Samuel. Now you say, if we bring in Adonai Mitchell, who I think is one of the only, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome, if you want to put him there. But Adonai Mitchell, I look at as an X receiver who can fight the press, who can line up on the perimeter consistently and do something like that. So if we pair that for Josh Allen, I think that's the receiver that they're trying to target. And you look at these teams right here, Xavier Legette, I feel like that was a Carolina Panthers guy. They want that guy who's going to stretch the football field, be there for Bryce Young. They have their underneath guys. They've continued to add to that. They brought in Deontay Johnson. So now, when I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers, I'm looking at the San Francisco 49ers who took Pearsall. Now, we still have our guy who we wanted all along on the board in Adonai Mitchell, and they could take him with the first pick in day 2. So I do like that there. Now, just talking about some other things we saw here, Quinn Mitchell. Didn't really talk much about him going to the Philadelphia Eagles, but I'm thinking, like I said, when you didn't have to move and you get a guy like Quinn Mitchell who matches really the athletic profile, the coverage profile, a lot of the things that you want. And when I talked about Quinn Mitchell, from what I saw on film, I felt that he was a guy who can move around, do a lot of different things. I feel like he can play nickel. I feel like he can play on the outside, of course. He's going to be that lockdown guy on the outside, but wherever you want to use him, along with Darius Slay and James Bradbury, I feel like he's that plug and play. And you look at Vic Fangio now coming over to the Philadelphia Eagles, he's going to want to run those exotic coverages. He's going to want to do a lot of things there. So I do like that for that football team. I'm a big fan of the Eagles 2024 season better. Eagles new edge linebacker draft. Georgia and Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma. I lost my family member. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Condolences to you, of course. Big Eagles fan, you gotta love what you saw today in this draft. They got a very, very good player, Quinn Mitchell. And I think just along with what you can add, you can go linebacker, like you said, you can go some different places in this draft. But I do like what this football team has done. Extended Devonta Smith. I just saw a little bit earlier, extended AJ Brown. So Howie Roseman is doing what he usually does around this time of the all season, just when everyone thinks, how can they retain all of these players? He somehow finds a way and he doesn't. So that's really good for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think even with how we saw last season end, you still have to feel very good about where they're going now. And Jalen Hurts getting back to the level of football that we saw 2 years ago. Now, I want to get to another pick right here, and that's Byron Murphy to the Seattle Seahawks. Too bad you can't draft new ownership. I want to get to Byron Murphy, and I think this is interesting for the Seattle Seahawks because, like I said, there were players on the board who I thought they possibly could draft, but we kind of see they went with that BPA approach. They wanted to get the best player available. And you look at kind of what they have on the edges. Darrell Taylor, Uchenna Nwosu, Boy Mafe, Derek Hall. Now they still brought in Leonard Williams. They extended Leonard Williams, but they're adding to that defensive line. And when I think about it, I say, okay, who's the new head coach? Mike McDonald. Where does he come from? Baltimore Ravens. That 3-tech and Justin Matabuke, who can penetrate the gap and who can get after the quarterback from that alignment, that was vital to that defense. That allows some of those guys that we look at in the Baltimore Ravens. You look at Jadeveon Clowney. You look at Kyle Van Noy. What they were able to do there, I think you're eating there because you have guys on the interior who can get after the quarterback. Now you're drawing linemen. Now you're drawing the pass protection to lean to the inside. So Mike McDonald really getting his 3-tech. That's explosive. And the sack numbers, like I said, with Johnny Newton, the production is just off the wall. But if you look at the disruption, what he brings in the run game and how he can get after the quarterback as well, I think Byron Murphy was really a home run pick for me when you look at all of the linemen that were kind of off the board. Now, a pick that I haven't talked about, the Las Vegas Raiders. Well, Marcus, Vikings fans seem mad about J.J. McCarthy. I think if you're a Vikings fan, I don't know kind of how you feel, man. I can understand if you didn't want JJ McCarthy, but I think with how the draft process has went and kind of what we saw, we knew these quarterbacks were going to fly off the board. If they didn't trade up to 3 to get a guy like Drake May, you kind of knew the next guy in line was going to be JJ McCarthy. Now, Michael Penix Jr., he went 8 off the board, but I feel like the next guy in line, especially for Minnesota, was JJ McCarthy. So if you're really a Vikings fan, you kind of knew that J.J. McCarthy was going to be in line, whether you traded up or whether you sat and took him right there at 11. They traded up 1 pick with the New York Jets and got him there. But I really don't understand because I think they have a great coach who can help with the young quarterback. They still have Sam Darnold who can be there and bridge the gap a little bit. They have Justin Jefferson. They have Jordan Addison. I like what they have on the offensive line, Aaron Jones, and I like the defensive move that they made to get Dallas Turner. So I don't know how they can really feel mad about this draft. Ken went LOL Vikings. I feel for Vikings fans. Lions were like them for decades. It's their turn on the bottom. And I feel like this is really dependent upon how does J.J. McCarthy turn out for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, there's people that are split on J.J. McCarthy, and you understand it because you see flashes. Like I talked about this a little bit earlier. I said sometimes there's going to be games like Penn State, but there's also going to be games like we see where he steps up 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, making big time plays, throwing the football down the football field, extending plays and being that quarterback that you want to see, projecting that and translating it to the NFL level. But it's just for Jim Harbaugh and kind of what he built around him, there's just some things we're going to have to see. And it's going to come with time for the Minnesota Vikings. I feel like if J.J. McCarthy was going to be the quarterback that a lot of people are projecting him to be, it would be with the Minnesota Vikings. So as a Vikings fan, you have to say, okay, I have to trust my receivers. I have to trust what we put around them. I have to trust the offensive line, and I have to trust Kevin O'Connell as the offensive guru to work with the quarterback. So I don't feel bad about that right there. But just getting back to this, talking about Brock Bowers going to the Las Vegas Raiders, I think with the tackle depth in this draft, This was just a BPA move, best player available. I was kind of surprised that they didn't go Talisa Fuanga. I thought that was something they can do, getting the right tackle there. But to get Brock Bowers, adding that with kind of what they have, we're going to look at this a little bit, talking about the Vegas Raiders. And for them, I mean, all of the quarterbacks were off the board. And we saw it. When I was mocking Michael Penix to the Las Vegas Raiders, I understood that it was kind of, he's going to be pushed up the board based on how we knew these quarterbacks were going, based on how they went in this draft. If you wanted Michael Penix Jr., there's no second round. And it's saying, if we don't feel that he's the guy, we feel okay with missing out on him. I think that they felt okay with missing out on Michael Penix Jr. Now, Brock Bowers, Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, Devonta Adams. And Gardner Minshew, I think, gives you kind of a safe floor when you talk about that division, but you're still going to have to look at it. Kansas City Chiefs are right there. Los Angeles Chargers are right there. So it's going to be interesting. This is going to be a defensive-minded team with Antonio Pierce, Max Crosby. They brought in Christian Wilkins. I just think he's such a dynamic playmaker. I don't view Brock Bowers as a traditional tight end. You watch the film, he is the offense for the Georgia Bulldogs, along with Lad McConkey. So it's just so many things he can do there. And I like the pick, understanding what the depth of this class is. It might be harder for McCarthy in the NFL if he doesn't know the plays. LOL. Yeah, I mean, I don't see McCarthy starting day one. Honestly, I think that he can progress into the system for the Minnesota Vikings, but I don't see it. If we had to bet, if I were a betting man, I had to bet JJ McCarthy coming out there week one for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think so, but I think that over time, he's still a very, very young quarterback, really contrary to Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix. He's only 21. So we're going to see how it plays out. It's just, we're going to have to see. And if you draft a guy like that with the 10th overall pick, obviously they took a lot of time with him, just trying to understand. And you watch the film and you go back and you see things there. How can we maximize this? Why didn't Jim Harbaugh use this a little bit more? Why didn't he use JJ McCarthy a little bit more? So those are the type of questions that they probably answered and they felt comfortable with taking them. But I'm very interested. I want to get back to this right here about what I'm seeing. I just feel like for the corner that I think Terrion Arnold is, and for what the Detroit Lions need, I feel like this was just a home run pick. One of my favorite players in this draft. You watch the film, he's not afraid to tackle. I like what he does in coverage. He's really that traditional press man corner. And some people, I think I kind of view Terrion Arnold different than consensus, because I've seen, okay, his best football might be in the slot, but I really don't see that. And especially not for this football team now, because they have Brian Branch. He's going to be that slot guy. He can also push back and play too high safety. But I think for them specifically, he's going to be that outside guy along with Carlton Davis, and they're going to play press man. You look at Aaron Glenn, what he likes to do. He's going to get in your face. He's going to be aggressive. So I think Terrion Arnold kind of fit in the mold for that team, being what they need in the type of player that they like. Very, very good pick. Now, some other things where we have to talk about. Really, I wasn't surprised with the Denver Broncos taking Bo Nix. And the reason that I say that is they don't have a second round pick. These quarterbacks were flying off the board. They had to take their guy. We look at this actually: Caleb, Jay, and Drake, Penix, JJ McCarthy. So 6 quarterbacks went. 6 out of 12 picks in the first 12 picks were quarterbacks, and they were forced to do it. If you waited to the second round, he just wasn't going to be there with it. Actually, they don't have a second round pick. So if you waited to day 2, he wasn't going to be there for the Denver Broncos. So I mean, bringing him in with Sean Payton, I'm just wondering, what is the expectation going to be? Because based on what they have right now on the roster, kind of based on what they have around them, I don't know if this is an ideal situation from day one for Bo Nix, but I'm just thinking really ideally, with kind of the football player that he is, with kind of how he reads defenses, what he can do for this football team, I think over time he'll become more consistent, especially under Sean Payton. Now, like I said, just going back to the Chicago Bears, some things that I like there, just looking at that connection, man. The NFC North is about to be wild. You look at the Green Bay Packers, you see Jordan Love, what he did in the playoffs in the back half of that season. Then you look at Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, the receivers they have there, Christian Watson. Then you look at the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff, Amara St. Brown. I mean, that extension, along with extending Panay Sewell, big time moves and really securing cornerstones of your franchise. But what is Jameson Williams going to look like next season? These are the types of questions that you have to have. And I think also, really, they could serve to add another receiver. Josh Reynolds, he went to the Rams. So now I'm just wondering kind of what it's going to look like in day two. There's a lot of things we can have for day two. And I want to go to some of these prospects because there are very good prospects as we shift over a little bit and look at who's really available in day two. Now, I want to talk about some of these players actually. And I don't think we have them here. Um, let's go here. So right here, like I said, we look at receivers. Lad McConkey's still on the board. Troy Franklin's still on the board, who may get pushed down further into day two, but Malachi Corley. One team is going to take him, and you look at kind of the skill set. What he brings you, run after the catch, playing underneath, being an extension of the run game, is a pass catcher. So to one team is going to value that. He's going to go fairly high in day two. But like I said, Adonai Mitchell, Roman Wilson, Malik Washington is a sleeper that I look for in day two. Probably not early in day two, but one of my favorite guys coming out of Virginia, a smaller guy, but just a dynamic playmaker. Keon Coleman still on the board. So when we look at these types of players, I also want to go to some of the other positions, cornerback, because there were some cornerbacks who we were talking about. Cooper DeJean did not go in the first round. And that's kind of what we've talked about. Would it be the Pittsburgh Steelers? Would it be the Green Bay Packers? And these are teams that could have used somebody like Cooper DeJean, but just passing up on them. And is it really the fact that with Nate Wiggins, I think because even for the Baltimore Ravens, with Nate Wiggins, you look at kind of what we expect out of a guy like Nate Wiggins. He's going to have to get bigger. Right now, he's a cover corner, but what can he bring you in the run game? What is the durability going to look like? How can he play and press on the line consistently against bigger receivers and different types of receivers? Those are the types of questions that you have for Nate Wiggins. But if he pans all of that out, going to be a very good corner. Just kind of surprised, though. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cooper DeJean. We're looking at corners who we thought would go in day one, but are still on the board right now. Ennis Rickshaw Jr. is going to go to a team. Kamari Lassiter, Andrew Phillips, I believe he's going to go higher in day two than some people really expect. So I'm looking at these types of corners on the board. And let's check out some of the other positions. Like we said, Johnny Newton being on the board. And I think really Johnny Newton, probably the only guy that we expected to go on day one out of this tackle class, along with Byron Murphy. So for him to be on the board, there's still value there. We look at the edge, and I was kind of interested that Darius Robinson, he went over there to the Arizona Cardinals. Chop Robinson, the Miami Dolphins, they wanted to pick some of that back up. When you lose Andrew Van Ginkel, and you look at kind of what the edge is right there, the injuries were brutal last year. So you continue to add that, just bringing juice off of the edge. Right now, Chop Robinson isn't the most polished pass rusher, but is an explosive guy. I think he's going to bring you a lot of different things off of the edge. Now, Marshawn Nealon, these are the type of guys that we start to look at in day two. Braylon Trice, Adisa Isaac. So I'm looking at guys who just are still on the board. I talked about this linebacker class in one of my videos. I think for me, Edgerrin Cooper is my favorite linebacker in the class, but you can also look at Junior Colson. These are different types of flavors. If you want a different guy, Cedric Gray, he's really balanced at the linebacker position. But as you talk about day two a little bit, you'll start to look at players. Mark says it was crazy how long it took for a defensive player to be taken. Yeah, I believe the first defensive player was actually taken. Check this out right here. The first defensive player was taken at the first defensive player. Oh, Eliatula too. The Indianapolis Colts pounced and got them an edge. So, yeah, that was the first defensive player. But, I thought that Quinion Mitchell would go higher. Terrion Arnold, I just don't know how Terrion Arnold really fell all the way to 24. But Dallas Turner, a lot of us thought he would go higher as well. So, these are just players who you look at on the board. And it's crazy because with all of the mock drafts, all the things that we talk about, you truly never know 100%. And we knew there were good offensive players in this draft, but who could have anticipated? We don't get a defensive player until pick 15 in the Indianapolis Colts. I thought they could have easily went Quinion Mitchell. I thought they could have easily went Brian Thomas Jr., but they get an edge right there. So we just look at these picks, and I mean, it's just different. then kind of how you never can mark this thing perfectly. Olu Fashanu to the New York Jets, I really like that. Now, as we kind of see, with the New York Jets, they didn't go Brock Bowers, and a lot of people said, okay, you bring in Morgan Moses, you bring in Tyron Smith. Do you have kind of that insurance a little bit at the tackle position? Elijah Vera Tucker's coming back. You look at what they have there along the interior. Do you feel solid getting Brock Bowers, getting a tackle later down the draft? But no, I really like what they did, and I thought Olu Fashanu was a very good pick right here, because how much can you trust Tyron Smith to stay healthy a full season at the left tackle position? Morgan Moses, he's getting older at that right tackle position. So just to get a tackle in the door and feel very confident about him, he's going to develop. He's going to be very good. I didn't touch on this pick yet, but I was surprised that JC Latham went 7. And I just think that for me, are you going to cover NBA at all during the playoffs? It's probably something I'll look into. I think right now I'll be looking heavily into the draft, honestly, for the next couple of days, live streaming, talking about reactions, winners and losers of the draft. I've been watching it, but I think for what you'll see on this channel, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft a lot. And like I said, though, going to number 7, just for JC Latham, Olu Fashanu right there. Brian Callahan, offensive line coach, one of the best ones in the game. And I think when you have a guy that has the intangibles, the traits like Olu Fashanu does, I'm just very surprised that they passed up on that to take JC Latham. And I was looking at the depth chart for the Tennessee Titans. I want to talk about this a little bit as well, because now the question becomes, when they do this right here, understanding that I think Rome Odunze wasn't on their board. They just brought in Calvin Ridley. They still got D-Hop and they still got Traylon Burks. But you said if you can get Olu, now I thought that Joe Alt was going to be the pick the whole time. The Los Angeles Chargers, they pivoted. They took Joe Alt at 5. So now we say, how can we get off of this? Who is the next guy on our board? And I thought that you put Olu Fashanu at left tackle, Peter Skoronski at left guard. You just brought in Lloyd Cushenberry. Now you're starting to look at some things and really strengthening the offensive line, because that's going to be key for Will Levis. I'm not saying that JC Latham can't be the guy for the Tennessee Titans, but I think with the prospect and how I kind of view him in Olu Fashanu, I just didn't find it all that close. I mean, even Amarius Mims is a tackle that I like more than JC Latham. So you kind of see where I'm going with that, even though Amarius Mims hasn't played as much football as some of these other tackle prospects. But it's just one of those things that were kind of a curveball for me. And I knew the whole time that JC Latham had so much steam to go 5 to the Los Angeles Chargers. I really didn't think that would happen, but he goes right there at 7, just kind of a curveball that happened in the NFL draft. Now, talking about some more of these picks that we saw, I believe I really touched up on a lot of things. Jared Verse, I like this for them. I thought easily they could have probably went Johnny Newton, and then you kind of pair that with Kobe Turner, Michael Hoyt, Byron Young, kind of what they have over there in Los Angeles. But still, I think going defense was key for this football team. I really like what they have on offense. And I talked about that team last year and saying that was an elite offense. Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford. They have a lot of things working in their favor. And I believe coming back into it next year, this is still going to be a very good offense that we're going to look at in 2024. Some more of these picks, like I said, I touched on Brian Thomas Jr., I touched on Graham Barton. I like what the Arizona Cardinals did. They really handled business. Get Marvin Harrison Jr., get a very talented player, Darius Robinson, can really be that 4-3, it can really be that 3-4 defensive end. And then when we talk about passing downs, if you want to get in the nickel, so many teams live in that. Now we push up one of those Russians, one of those outside linebackers, kick Darius Robinson inside, let him be a pass rushing 3-tech on really passing obvious downs. That's something that you have. So just that versatility. Tyler Guyton, I think for the Dallas Cowboys, really more of that developmental arc right now. Let's talk about this depth chart for a little bit for the Dallas Cowboys, looking at what they have. Because I'm just not, for me, I'm not the biggest fan of Terrence Steele at the right tackle position. I talked about this when I talked about mock drafts, and I think when I look at this football team, offensive line was really in play. And sometimes if the board got a little weird, then I'd pivot off of that. But for me, offensive line, and then looking at second round, day 2 a little bit. Can they get one of those running backs? Trey Benson, can he be that guy for this football team? So they still have some options there. But right now, you look at Tyler Guyton, he's slated in this depth chart to be left tackle. But I think Tyler Smith is that guy for you right there. Terrence Steele, he's still slated to be the starting right tackle. Zach Martin, we know he's going to be the starting right guard. Brock Hoffman is slated at center right now. So there were a lot of different options that they could have taken, but with the offensive lineman who went off the board, this is kind of where you had to pivot, get one of those guys in the room. No. Talking about these guys down the board, I talked about Xavier Legette. Actually, I want to look at this for the Carolina Panthers a little bit. I like kind of quietly what the Carolina Panthers have been doing. Actually, before we get to that, though, let's talk about draft trades a little bit. Just because if you didn't see a draft trade, okay, let me get to this comment. John says, Bears have pocket aces with Caleb and Adunze. Go all in and trade up for JPJ. Protect the lap of your new franchise quarterback. If Poles trades up, he's going Super Saiyan this draft. Do you really think that Ryan Poles, I mean, of course you got to love it. Jackson Powers Johnson, he's a starting center, all pro potential. But there's just not a lot of cap. The Bears don't have a lot of capital. They have 2 more picks in this draft. Are you saying give up some of next year's capital to try to come up and get JPJ? And where does JPJ go in this draft? Zach Frazier's going to go. I think JPJ goes before Zach Frazier, but I'm looking at some of those centers. I want to pull up the draft picks for the Chicago Bears. I'm just talking about, and I believe this is 2023. So, yeah, this is what they have in 2023. They have 2 draft picks left. Actually, I'm going to put this up just to double check. How many draft picks do they have
Bears select Rome Odunze
in 2024? And talk about Chicago Bears draft picks 2025. 2025. Chicago Bears draft picks 2025. So in 2025, they have a first, 2 seconds, a third, a fourth, a fifth, and they have 3 sixes. So possibly they could give up some of next year's capital to move up and get JPJ. I would like that move if they try to go up there and get him. Now, the only thing that might hold the Bears back is the front office and how they always mess things up. I mean, as far as this season, I think that they did all right. I don't think they can mess this season up. I do like the roster heading into the season. Like I said, I really like what the entire North has done. And the Green Bay Packers, I mean, I see how Jordan Love consistently developed going into the season, but you also got to think with the Detroit Lions, the defense getting better. Key for that football team. Offense, I believe it's going to be what it's going to be. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon St. Brown, he just got his bag. He's even more satisfied. Now he's coming into OTAs excited. Now he's in training camp excited. So all of that, along with Jameson Williams. Now remember, last offseason, Jameson Williams had that hamstring, I believe. So that kind of threw off his track a little bit, getting to what he wanted to be going into the first full year post ACL. Now, barring injury, let's knock on the table. This is the first full, no injury, hopefully, barring health. We want to see everybody healthy. This will be Jameson Williams' time to go. So you pair that with, like I said, I think they could really even add a receiver if they want to later in the rounds. So offense is going to be what it's going to be. And the Penei Sewell, he just got his bag as well. Jared Goff, what are they going to do with Jared? What is Jared Goff's contract looking like? That's another question. But overall, I think offensively, we know what the Detroit Lions are. Defensively, they just made a big-time move. Now, Stavzilla said Arnold, Davis, Robertson, Mosley, Branch, and Ife Melifonwu. Lions secondary looking real good. Listen, I did an extensive breakdown on Terry Arnold. And if you want to hear everything I feel about Terry Arnold, because I can tell you right now, I love the pick. One of my favorite picks in the draft. But if you really want me to get down into it and talk about Terry Arnold specifically, there's a video on this channel you can go check out. I compared him to Quinion Mitchell. Terry Arnold was my favorite corner in this draft. So I do like that. I do like that move for this football team. Getting back to the tracker here. Just really, is there any other moves? Like I said, I like Neighbors going to the Giants. They didn't overthink it. It was nothing to overthink. One of the receivers I really view in high regard, along with Marvin Harrison Jr. We talked about the quarterbacks, kind of what I felt with Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. We know what he's going to bring to the Arizona Cardinals. Rome Odunze. So we touched up on a lot of these picks. And I think lastly, we got to get to these trades to kind of understand what's it looking like going into day 2. What is day 3 looking like? The Vikings sent 11 and 129. Oh, actually, let me share this. The Vikings sent 11 and 129, a 4th round pick, and 157, a 5th round pick to the Jets for 10 and 203. So the Vikings, they give up a 4th and a 5th rounder to move up one spot. I believe this is preventing the Denver Broncos from trying to move up. So they just do that one spot there and get their guy. The Jets take Olu Fashanu. Okay, so yeah, they traded down. Okay, so the Vikings and the Jaguars pick. This was another trade that we saw in the NFL draft. The Vikings traded up. They got the 17th overall pick, and they gave those picks. They gave up a 2024 first round pick, number 23 overall. They gave up a 2024 5th round pick, a 2025 third, and a 2025 fourth. So they did that right there to move up, get their guy number 17 in Dallas Turner. And I believe this is jumping the Rams, jumping some of those teams who would have gotten Dallas Turner. Then that pushes the Rams to now go and get Jared Verse. And we know that really the Rams, they like to drop their linebackers and edges in coverage. So Dallas Turner would have been perfect for that. Another trade that we have here. Okay, so we looked at this. The Vikings have now 3. So now the Vikings have 3 picks in the 2025 NFL draft, but I think they made some good moves to get back up. Jaguars traded down, got BTJ. Okay, this is another trade we have to talk about. The Lions and Cowboys trade first round picks, and this is what we were just talking about with Terry and Arnold. The Cowboys picked 29, where they got Tyler Guyton, and numbered 73, and gave up 24 in a 2025 7th round pick. So the Detroit Lions gave up number 73 overall to go and get Terry and Arnold, and I believe it was well worth it. For the Dallas Cowboys, could this number 73 overall pick be where they get their running back now? Because I think they could really take one of those backs in day 2. So this is where they trade. Okay, and this is another trade we have. The Kansas City Chiefs, they moved up from 32. Traded up. Yeah. So with the number 28 overall pick, this is where the Buffalo Bills. No, the Buffalo Bills traded the Kansas City Chiefs because they got up to get Xavier Worthy, and they got up to 28. So they did acquire the pick from the Bills, actually. So now they bring that in there. And then Buffalo, they still traded back out of the first round with Carolina. And they really moved up a couple of spots. Instead of picking at 200 now, they're picking at 141. So probably a player that they're viewing on the board who may slide down and be there at that day. But overall, these are the trades. And I want to take one more look at the players who are still on the board. Some players that I'm really high on, man. Some players that I'm really high on. Next page here. Okay, we go next page. Let me just go like this. Because I looked at our wide receivers. I looked at our corners. I looked at our defensive ends. I looked at our edges. Yeah, I think most of our day 1 guys, like I said, receivers are where a lot of people differ when we talk about these players here. Looking at interior, like I said, Zach Frazier, Cooper Beebe, Christian Haynes, Zach Zitner. And I think the best thing is probably if you really want one of these players for your team, now we've probably all watched the film up to this point, but just get some more, check out some more film. Like I said, Cooper Beebe, Christian Haynes is going to go, Zach Zitner. Also, Zach Frazier. I don't have Zach Frazier listed here. Is he listed? Okay, he's listed as center. So yeah, Zach Frazier still here. Hunter Norzar, Cedric Van Pran, JPJ. It's kind of crazy because the closer we got to the draft, I saw more people leaning off of JPJ. So that's something we have there. Looking at our tackle on the board. Blake Fisher, a name that you need to get familiar with. Kingsley Su'a-Mattia, Javon Foster. So, like I said, I really like this tackle class. You still got Roger Rosengarten. We got some players in this class, especially at that tackle position. I think the corner position as well. Let's just look at some of these corner positions and drop down below in the comments. Whoever your favorite team is, who is your ideal day two pick? Who is your dream player? If your team can get him in day two, who would you get? Look at some of the corners here. I think this is where I want to go. Like I said, Kool-Aid's on the board. If that's your flavor there, I think it's the outside corner. He's probably the best one here. Cooper DeJean, for me, I keep hearing the safety talk, and I went to watch Cooper DeJean and specifically see what do I feel about Cooper DeJean. I think he could play safety. He could be a dang good safety, but it's not to say he's not outside corner. I think the fact that some people are just writing off and saying big nickel. Now, there are certain things that he will struggle with if you put him on the island. I don't think he's the corner that you just put on the island, but if you're in a zone heavy scheme, keep some things in front of you. Now we attack the football. Now we get involved in the run game. Now we can come up and make tackles. I think that's Cooper DeJean. I don't think he's really that press man-to-man bump and run island corner consistently, but like I said, if we can get in the zone heavy scheme and do some of those things, then I like Cooper DeJean there. Ennis Rakestraw, fan of him as well. Ronaldo Green, he's really that more press profile guy that you'll look at corner in day two. Max Melton. I was watching some Max Melton. I really like him as well. Kyrie Jackson, just some of the names that I like in this class. Mike Sanger still, he's going to go high in day two. Lions is my favorite team. I think we could use some OL depth or another LB. Yeah, I mean, I agree. And when I was looking at mock drafts, when I was even making my own mock drafts, I consistently saw Zach Frazier round one. These different types of players round one. I don't think that, like you said, depth at offensive line. I don't think it's a dire need, but Kevin Zeitler, he's an older football player. And then you look at Frank Ragnow. He is getting older as well. So I think you have Penei Sewell, Taylor Decker. You look at some of those pieces along the lines and just adding depth, getting a little bit younger, but still adding good football players. So when they walk away, now you can just plug and play those guys who you drafted with value. Kenny Tran says, how did Tarian fall to us? I don't know. I do not know. And I think the fall really came from the Indianapolis Colts going live to Latu. I didn't see him going to that team. I mean, he was my number one edge in this class, but I just didn't see him going to that team right there. So still a very good football player, though. And going back to this comment, though, when you talk about another linebacker, I like the linebackers in this class. A lot of people say if you want a linebacker, this isn't the right class. And I would agree to a certain extent. But I think the top linebackers will fall because it's just not as valuable of a position. If you can get your hands on, say, okay, let's actually look at the draft picks for the Detroit Lions and talk about realistically what are the options in day two. So let's look at the picks right here before we talk about what's the possibility. And getting to your comment here, what first round pick do you think would be the best fantasy football player? For me, my computer's freezing up here. I think, do you want a certain position or just offensive player in general? Because I think if I talk about a certain position, my answer may be a little bit different. So what are you looking for specifically when you ask that question? So very, very good, interesting options. Okay, just any offensive player. I'd say Malik Neighbors or Jaden Daniels. Just that's my quick and honest answer. I think Rome Odunze is good, but Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are going to eat away from his targets. Brock Bowers, depending on the quarterback play, he's going to get fed in that offense because I think he's the best weapon outside of Devontae Adams. So I would give you my hierarchy there. I say Jaden Daniels will be explosive in Washington. I say Malik Neighbors is just going to be electric in New York. And I say Brock Bowers would be the guy alongside Devontae Adams who would light it up and give you a lot of statistical numbers. Those are my guys right there. Yeah. Interested to see what Pearsall does as well in San Francisco, but until they trade one of their, I wouldn't bank on that. But yeah, those are the three guys I give you. Neighbors, in my opinion, he has that speed. Yeah. Yeah, Neighbors. He's just one of those guys where you say, even with Daniel Jones, get him the football, he's going to be electric and he's going to put up numbers. Those are my guys. Honestly, oh, Neighbors looks like a beast. Hopefully they can move the ball. Yeah. I mean, with Neighbors, the thing is the run after the catch, obviously, but he lines up in so many different spots. He's one of those guys where if you're an opposing team, let's just say hypothetically, New York Giants, Trevon Diggs, they're in the same NFC East division. So if you have Trevon Diggs or Deron Bland, any corner, the best corner on the opposing team in that division, or we can go to the opposite division. We can go to the opposite team. Quinn Mitchell for the Philadelphia Eagles, Darius Slay for the Philadelphia Eagles. They're gonna have to travel because it's not gonna be as much as just we're lining up outside one play and we're guarding Malik Neighbors. Next play, he's going against our third corner. He's going to demolish your third corner and do it every single time. So, for one, he's going to dictate defenses. They're going to have to travel their best corner with him. He's going to be a nightmare. And Brian Dable is the right guy. He's an offensive-minded guy. It's going to come down to Daniel Jones for that team. Now, just really touching on that point as well, let me get to this comment. Wasted Banana says some of the best available for day 2: Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, Johnny Newton, Cooper DeJean, McConkey, Lad McConkey. These were players I all talked about a little bit earlier in the stream. And I mean, you look at them, you say, okay, they could easily have went day 1, especially Cooper DeJean. How is he not off the board? Johnny Newton, how is he not off the board? Teams value that pass rushing 3-tech. Lad McConkey, separator, can play inside out, do a lot of different things. Adonai Mitchell. I think a lot of people are more split on Adonai Mitchell than some of the other receivers, but I like him as well. So those are some things there. But yeah, like I was saying though, actually getting to the point of talking about my defensive player, who I would say is possibly like that fantasy guy that I look at. Okay, let's actually talk about this here. I think obviously, if I'm looking at defensive players who's going to be high in fantasy, I think Dallas Turner, just with the Minnesota Vikings scheme and what they have for him there, I think he's going to have a lot of production. Latu, I think he's just his skill set is going to create production there. There's just not a lot of defensive players to even choose from, but those are the guys I like though. Terry and Arnold's going to be put in some good positions in Detroit. Quinn Mitchell's going to be good. I wonder what Chop Rock, especially with kind of what the Miami Dolphins have at edge. I wonder how explosive and how impactful he'll be there. So these are some good, some interesting players here.
Hey, Olu.
But overall, though,
hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I feel really solid about this first round. It was different than kind of what I expected, but just looking at it, getting a good feel for it, I think some teams will be very happy. Even for the Pittsburgh Steelers, getting Troy Fautun out, I think when you do that, Broderick Jones, I don't see Troy Fautun being a right tackle. So with him, he could play left tackle. Broderick Jones played right tackle last season. He could stick there. I like what they have in the interior along with James Daniels, Isaac Seumalo. They could still add a center later. Bo Limmer, Cedric Van Pran, Mason McCormick, different types of things you could do. So there are so many options and so many good football players. I think we're getting close to a close here. If you have any comments, things you want to talk about in day 2, I'm going back live day 2. And hopefully for day 2, I can actually go live during the selections. Had class today, so I couldn't go live during the selections, but I went live after the draft. So checking out that and looking at the radar for some of these players that are going day 2. So last call for any comments, any questions that you have going into day 2, any players to look out for. I was at the draft today. Whew, crazy environment. I could just imagine. I know it was packed. You say you were at the draft. Take me through the moment of Terrion Arnold when he gets drafted and he says, "I'm coming home," and he celebrates and does all those different things, because I saw that during the TV stream, but Terrion Arnold just got up there and he was going crazy. He was super excited to be a Detroit Lion. What was that like in real time, seeing that? Kenny Tran says Zach Zitner. Yeah. I mean, this is I wouldn't even say underrated, because it's just interior linemen don't go as high, but there are some good interior linemen, like you said, Zach Zitner. I just talked about Cooper Beebe, Christian Haynes. We can go for days talking about these guys. Like I said, Mason McCormick is a guy I really like on the interior. So there's options there, real options there, if you want to take that route. Kalen Carson, yeah. Kalen Carson, Wake Forest, yeah. I like him as well. I give you a corner. Actually, I give you a safety. Just a fun player that I like. Me personally, I was watching. Let me go to him right here. I was watching Cole Bishop today. Just watching some Cole Bishop at the safety position. Interesting player. Interesting player. I think there are some underrated safeties. They're all different. And that's the thing about this class. Tyler Newman, Dadrian Taylor Demerson, they're just different safeties. People were really happy, especially when they traded up. Yeah, when they traded up and I saw Terrion Arnold was on the board, I knew. I knew. It wasn't even a question. I said, okay, Quinion Mitchell just went off the board. Who's left? Why would they trade up? Then I looked and said, Terrion Arnold's right there. That's the player for that football team. There were so many people that I couldn't get super close. Yeah, man. I honestly, probably just being in that environment, it wouldn't even matter. Close, far, medium, just anywhere. That's probably an electric building and just an electric place to be. Sion Vaki is like defensive weapon. I don't know what position you should play. There's a couple of players like that in this class that, I mean, just kind of bouncing off that. A player who I like, I'm not really sure with him, Peyton Wilson. And I talked about Peyton Wilson a little bit earlier at the linebacker position, but I don't think that he's as physical as you would like for an off-ball linebacker, but his athleticism is off the charts. So how do you get the most out of a guy like that and bring him to be the football player that we saw at NC State? Yeah, man. Just looking at all these positions. There's still some tight ends on the board. Cade Stover, Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott. I like this class. Honestly, I'll probably just watch some more film. Probably going to come out with the video later talking about my winners from day one of the draft. Might do losers. I'd bank on doing winners. Not sure if I want to do losers here. But yeah, man, this is just very good draft. Luke McCaffrey. Yeah, Luke McCaffrey, Christian McCaffrey's brother. I think that he'll be one of those players that he'll go later in the mid rounds, but depending on the team and if he can carve out a role there. I mean, I saw some of what he did at the Senior Bowl, and I like some of his work there. Throwing a receiver at you, what do you feel about Johnny Wilson? Johnny Wilson is just a player where it's like, I mean, you see the size, but who has a role that they can carve out for him? A couple of players like that in this draft, actually. I really like this receiver class, man. I can go on for days. I can go on for days about this receiver class. Looking at some of the tackles here. Oh, we already talked about the tackles. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's very, very good draft. Very good day one. When that guard, when that linebacker. Marcus says, I think people are scared to draft a white corner. Cooper DeJean, LOL, just kidding. Honestly, though, like, I don't get it. I don't get how Cooper DeJean falls out of the first round. I watched the film, and I've actually finished my evaluation of Cooper DeJean. I don't get it. I mean, there's teams in the first round that could have used them and took players who I look at and kind of side eye. Green Bay Packers. I understand that you want. Like, I think Cooper DeJean would have been a perfect fit for them. They go, they get Jordan Morgan. It's situations like that where you say, "What are we doing here?" Now, I think that they do have a plan, but I just think Cooper DeJean's a better player. That's just my honest opinion. I'm interested to see how this linebacker class plays out. Who goes first? I think it's because he really didn't play man in college. Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying. That goes to what I was saying. If you wanted a traditional outside corner, Nate Wiggins, and really a man profile, press or off man, Quinion Mitchell, Terry Arnold, and Cooper DeJean, those. No, not Cooper DeJean, Terry Arnold, Quinion Mitchell, Nate Wiggins. Those were guys who you could say, okay, this is what we want. But I think just Cooper DeJean is a player where you can find a role for him. And it's just he's going to play outside. He's going to move around, play inside. He can do a lot of different things. So it just
there's probably also some concern.
Even kind of what you saw for Iowa in that defense. It's not like he couldn't hold up outside. And like I said, we're not just going to leave him on an island. But if we run a zone heavy scheme, I think he'll be a perfect fit there. And he has good ball skills.
It is an expensive.
Where do you think?
Policy. Night number 1 of the NFL draft.
Okay, so I see your comment further down. D-Town Heat says Arnold paired up with Branch going to be fired. Yeah, that Branch pick, that Terry Arnold pick, man. As soon as I saw that, I said, okay, when I get on this live stream, that's exactly what we're going. We're going to talk about this. They are a winner in this draft. Brad Holmes, he had a plan, and he executed the plan. Eric Easley says, where do you think Keon Coleman falls and Edgerton Cooper falls? Let me look at the day 2 board here. Actually,
well, look at you.
Let me go to the day 2 selections. I actually look at some teams that I like both of those players on.
Grace didn't believe in magic, but her daughter was happy to prove her wrong. You were made to dream about it for years. We were made to help you book it in minutes.
So let's go to day 2 right here. All right, so here we have day 2. Let me share this. All right, so here we have day 2. Where would I like Keon Coleman? Wouldn't be surprised if the Carolina Panthers double dip at receiver. Wouldn't be surprised at that at all. I think that's where I like him. Probably the most out of these teams. Buffalo Bills, I think Adonai Mitchell. Actually, the Buffalo Bills could get Johnny Newton. Better player. If you're taking the best player available approach, him, Ed Oliver along the interior of the offensive line, go for it. New England Patriots, I think they could get Ladd. Drake May. No, actually, yeah, Ladd's still. Yeah, Ladd's still on the board. Yeah. So yeah, Ladd, Drake May. Now we say, okay, I like what they have here. I like what they have here. For Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker. Interesting here. Eagles. I see Edgerrin Cooper as an Eagle. Nakobe Dean is going to be back, and then I think with Edgerrin Cooper, I view him differently than some people do. He's my best linebacker in this class. I like Junior Colson. I like Peyton Wilson. I like Cedric Gray, but Edgerrin Cooper is my best linebacker in this class. What would your perfect draft be for the Rams? Looking at let me look at what their picks are. I like what they did so far. Jed Verse, Johnny Newton could have been. Actually, Byron Murphy would have been in a perfect world, would have been my player there for this team. But Jared Verse, I like that as well. Just adding pass rush. It didn't have to be on the interior just because Aaron Donald retired. I'm not going to take that route. Let's look how many picks the Rams have here.
Sleep better together.
Let's get
Visit
back to this.
sleepnumber.com.
What is their day 2 looking like?
With the
So they
19th
got,
pick
okay, so they pick
in
at
the
52.
2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Jared Verse,
I think it wouldn't hurt
defensive
to
end,
add
Florida State.
Is a bully
corner
on the
corner,
edge.
of
He
course.
is explosive
Corner
with
is
his
what
hands
I
and
was
his
looking
feet.
at for this football
He's a
team.
little bit lower version of Will Anderson, who we saw go last year
really
and be
like
the
the
rookie of the
offense.
year
Offensive
with
line.
the Houston Texans. But he's going to test your brakes. You want to go to the car
Just thinking about the
dealership
value
and
of
test your brakes
52.
for free? He will test the brakes of offensive tackles for free across the NFL.
With
Watch,
this
he's
defense,
running them
with
right
Chris
back into the
Stewart, what does he
quarterback.
want to do?
That's what he does. He also has the speed. He'll mix that in, try and win at the top of the rush. But more than anything else, he's going to go through your pads.
I think I'll probably
The
go
quickness
offensive
shows up
line
against
here.
the run. He can hold up the front
At that
side,
52nd
and then he can
overall
be disruptive
pick.
on
And
the
then at
backside
83,
as well.
I may go corner. Or you could flip flop it.
With the 19th
Either way
pick
there.
in the
Eric Easley says, I hope the Eagles get Cooper. Yeah, I think that's a home run fit. The linebacker position is something that they've kind of been, you know, they had TJ Edwards, they had Kaiser White, and then they Kaiser White, he went to Arizona with Jonathan Gannon. TJ Edwards, he went to the Chicago Bears. Now it was kind of Nicholas Morrow, Shaquille Leonard, Nakobe Dean. And I think Nakobe Dean I still don't know what Nakobe Dean is as a full-time starter for the Eagles, but I think Adrian Cooper would help there and add there. Rams first round pick since 2016 golf. Yeah, that was crazy. We're in 2024. So just think about what they gave up to get Matthew Stafford. And listen, they got a Super Bowl out of it. So I mean, I guess they did what they had to do. You don't think Chargers go wide receiver in the second? And if they do, who do you like them to grab? All right, let me look at what pick they actually have in the second. Just had this pulled up. So they got 37. So they got Quentin Johnston. They have, let's take a look at this. They have Quentin Johnston. Actually, we could just go to their depth chart. They have Quentin Johnston. They have Josh Palmer, Darius Davis. So they're it's brutal right there. And like I said, that's why I felt like in Jim Harbaugh, he was going to value the offensive line, but I thought Neighbors could have been a home run hit there as well. I like the tackle depth in this class, but just based on what they have, I think Quentin Johnston he's going to play outside for you. He's going to have to improve. Struggled mightily in his rookie season. Josh Palmer, a good receiver that I like there. I want to push him down if I can. What type of receiver could I get here? I don't think Ladd might be there for the Chargers. Well, no, I got Ladd going to New England. Okay, scratch that. I got Ladd going to New England. Nah, not Troy Franklin. I think that's redundant. Keon, I mean, I wouldn't mind Keon Coleman. I think Malachi Corley could be interesting, but that's kind of rich at 37. Ladd's just not, I don't think he's gonna be there. I think Troy Franklin, like I said, that's a bit redundant for me. Adonai Mitchell, I don't think he's gonna be there. Roman Wilson, hey, Jim Harbaugh, Michigan, LA Chargers, bringing them back. And the thing about Roman Wilson is we didn't get to fully see Roman Wilson because Michigan ran the ball so much. So I like him. Him or Keon Coleman. That's my answer there. Yeah, that's my answer there for them. Or honestly, they could go. I wouldn't be surprised if they go Mike Sanders still either to add to that defense. You know, it's just never have enough defense. But yeah, I mean, this just touching up on the first round, everything we have here, we touched on a lot. We talked about a majority of these picks, kind of what I like, kind of what I'm seeing. We talked about the trades, everything there. So like I said, guys, I'll be back on stream tomorrow. check out what time 2 starts. I believe day 2 at 6 o'clock. So we're gonna be on for day 2 during the process. And I'll probably stay on during the process and still stay on after, just to kind of react and give kind of that post reaction to those picks a little bit. But thank you guys for tuning in, man. This was a great one, talking about day 1 of the 2024 NFL draft. And we're gonna be back. We're gonna be, like I said, we're gonna be streaming them all, and I'm probably gonna be coming out with the video talking about my winners of day 1. I have a lot of winners there. Have a good night, Marcus. You have a good night as well. We're gonna be out. Thank you guys for tuning in once again. See you next time. See you tomorrow, actually. We'll be back. Johnny Wilson is a beast. Hey, we're going to leave on that note. Johnny Wilson is a beast. He's a different flavor, but I do like him. Interested to see how he transitions into the NFL. Him and Keon would be cool. Good night. Hey, good night, man. See you tomorrow.